Hello. Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Melanie Mason. I'm a political reporter here at the LA Times, and we're going to catch you up to speed on what was this crazy Democratic debate in Las Vegas on Wednesday night. This was definitely the spiciest debate that we have seen so far from the Democratic candidates. Everybody was ready to rumble. I'm going to try really hard not to make bad Vegas jokes as I catch you up to speed, but it kind of lends itself to it. It's fight night on Saturday, but it was really fight night on Wednesday. What we saw is we had a lot of the candidates who realized that this might be their last big chance to have a strong performance in the Nevada caucuses on Saturday and propel them into Super Tuesday coming up in 2 weeks. And because of that, they were ready to make their distinctions with their rivals known. The biggest change on the debate stage was the arrival of former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg, who's been spending hundreds of millions of dollars on television ads, but hasn't yet been on the debate stage, and the candidates were willing to throw some elbows. But there were also a lot of other subplots that were worth watching. I personally was fascinated with the dynamic between Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar and former Mayor of South Bend, Indiana, Pete Buttigieg. Now, these are two candidates who sort of are positioned in the moderate lane of the Democratic Party, and they both have had two very surprising strong performances so far in the contest we've seen. Pete Buttigieg finished in first place in Iowa and in second place in New Hampshire, and Amy Klobuchar had a surprise third place finish in New Hampshire. And you can tell that they're eyeing each other's voters as they try to figure out who is going to come out on top as the candidate to claim the moderate mantle and take on Bernie Sanders, who really is out front.
Are you trying to say that I'm dumb, or are you mocking me here, Pete?
You can tell that there's no love lost between these two candidates. They had some very sharp exchanges, including Amy Klobuchar at one point turning to Pete Buttigieg and saying,
"I wish everyone was as perfect as you, Pete."
It felt almost more like a schoolyard battle than an esteemed debate between two experienced politicians. Of course, we also had Senator Elizabeth Warren, who has sort of been in this weird middle zone. She hasn't been failing in her presidential campaign, but she also hasn't been one of the top contenders. And she really needed a breakout performance tonight to attract more attention. And I think it's fair to say that she did so. But within the first half of the debate, she was the top candidate trending on Twitter because she laced into not only former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg,
a billionaire who calls women fat broads and horse-faced lesbians. And no, I'm not talking about Donald Trump. I'm talking about Mayor Bloomberg.
But many of the other candidates on stage, including Klobuchar and Pete Buttigieg.
Mayor Buttigieg really has a slogan that was thought up by his consultants to paper over a thin version of a plan that would leave millions of people unable to afford their health care. It's not a plan, it's a PowerPoint. And Amy's plan is even less. It's like a Post-it note, insert plan here.
For most of the campaign, Warren's brand has been that of a fighter. But in the last couple of weeks, she has pivoted a bit to emphasize more of a unity message. Tonight, it was all fight all the time. We heard a lot less about her uniting the party and more about her talking about how she would fight for you in the White House. It's an interesting strategy shift. Next up is Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, who really is the undisputed frontrunner of the Democratic field right now. He has seemed to take over the progressive lane all to himself while the moderates squabble amongst themselves. And quite frankly, this debate mostly mirrored what's been the dynamic in the campaign overall. While Pete and Amy and Elizabeth all squabbled amongst themselves, very few landed many serious punches on Sanders, which probably means that his position in the race will not be particularly shifted. But there was one subplot in this debate with Sanders that's worth following, and that's the question about his health records. Remember, Senator Sanders is 78 years old, and he only recently had a heart attack. But when pressed about if he would release additional health records, he seemed to decline.
Hey, follow me around the campaign trail, 3, 4, 5 events a day. See how you're doing compared to me.
I would anticipate that his rivals, as well as the media, will be pressing him more for transparency around his health records, particularly given questions around his age. And that brings us to former Vice President Joe Biden. Remember Joe Biden? Remember when he was the frontrunner for the Democratic nomination? Joe Biden has been having a hard time attracting support and attracting donors after some unimpressive showings in Iowa and New Hampshire. In this debate, he didn't fall flat on his face or stick his foot in his mouth, which sometimes is a problem for Joe. But he also didn't have necessarily the standout moments that will get people talking in the days to come. So it's really a big question of how much he has assuaged the concerns of his donors and attracted voters in advance of Saturday's caucus. And if for some reason you're sad about this debate being over, don't worry. There's one next Tuesday in South Carolina in advance of the South Carolina primary on the 29th. So you can join us then and follow all of our political coverage at latimes.com.